everyone, it's Alan Schimmel, DevOps.com, DevOps TV, DevOps Enterprise Summit 2017, San Francisco. Our guest is Dr. Stephen Mayner of Scaled Agile. Stephen, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, you presented this morning.
Just came off the stage, yes.
Why don't you share with our audience a little bit about what you presented on?
Sure. So it's a continuation of the story that we began at the conference last year, talking about the research that I had gathered in going through my doctorate, focused on organizational change, how it's so prone to failure, and what we can do about it. Because I work with many organizations going through DevOps transformations, and we hear this pattern over and over again, that it often fails. And the stakes are so high, right? Our businesses need the ability to have organizational agility to adapt to the changing marketplace. But if we know that the research tells us that it's more likely to fail than succeed, well, that's not good. So it really was just continuing the story that I began last year, talking about the role of transformational leadership behaviors, a certain approach to leadership, and how it affects whether or not organizational change succeeds or fails.
So let's take the premise of that, that a lot of these transformations are failing, and certainly change leadership is a primary factor in the success or failure. But Stephen, do we have any kind of real metrics on this failure?
Yeah, and in fact, there's been an amazing amount of research that's been done to set those kinds of metrics, and that's what I uncovered as you go through the process that you have to do, in a doctoral program of understanding what the body of knowledge currently says. In fact, one of the studies that I shared in the talk was a survey of all the literature to find out what are those metrics, and they were looking at different kinds of change. So is all change the same, or are some different? And so they sort of laid out, based on the kind of change it is, what does the data tell us in terms of what the success rates are. The number one least successful type of change was change that involved changing the culture. And of course, as we know from every Agile and DevOps survey that's ever been done, culture change is the number one impediment that organizations face when adopting these patterns of product development. So if we know that doing this is going to change the culture, and yet culture change has the worst success rate, like 19%, that's not a good set of facts. So that's what really motivated me to say, look, we've got to change that equation somehow. Mm-hmm. We have to give organizational leaders some better information on what they can do to set the conditions for change, so that they greatly increase the probability that the change will succeed. And what I uncovered was how leaders lead has the biggest influence on how employees respond to the change. And employee resistance to change is the number one reason why change fails. So if we can make them more, owning the change, being supportive of the change, leaning into the change, then the change effort is probably going to go a whole lot better.
Sure will. But so to me, this kind of transcends DevOps.
It does, right? Indeed.
This whole area of change and accepting change. As a co-founder of several companies, leader of these companies, one of the things I learned is that for the most part, especially in IT for whatever reason, people hate change.
Right.
They fear change.
Absolutely.
Because change upsets their status quo.
That's right.
And it's very hard, because their initial position is change.
Yes.
This is not going to end well for me.
Right.
And so it's something we need to continue working on.
Absolutely. And if you so what I learned was there's something about humans that respond to change. It's baked into our DNA. And when we have that feeling like this change is going to result in me not succeeding in this new world the way I did in the old world, and if I can't succeed, then am I still going to have a job? And if I don't have a job, then am I going to be able to provide for my family? So we go right down to the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs like that fast, right? It's survival mode.
It gets real. Stuff gets real.
And whether we're thinking about it consciously or subconsciously, that gives us that resistance response, right? So if we can lead in a way where that response is not invoked, then people aren't going to go there. They're going to see this sequence of events completely differently, and we'll get completely different results. Sure. So absolutely, that understanding, that we're in the people business, regardless of what it is that we do, right? And the better understanding of how people respond to change and how leaders can lead through that, it's going to make all the difference.
Absolutely. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for sharing this with us. And lessons for people and all. A couple of things. Number one, change is natural, and you can embrace change, resist change, but it's not going to stop change. Number two, especially in DevOps, I think as much as in anything else, leadership is so important. It doesn't have to initiate with that top leadership.
That's right.
But they've got to get on board at some point and lead.
And one final point that I really emphasize is it's so easy in these change periods to respond to people who are struggling with the change, like, okay, you're not on board, so we might even try to move you out. I think that's absolutely the wrong response. Right? Everybody has value. That's the challenge of leadership. To see people as individuals, to see where they're struggling, and recognize the value, and lead with empathy in a way that we want to give everybody the most opportunity that we possibly can to get through that change curve personally, come out the other side, and contribute to where the company's going.
Agreed. Dr. Stephen Mayner, Scaled Agile, here at DevOps Enterprise Summit 2017. This is Alan Schimmel for DevOps.com and DevOps TV.